from Los Angeles, this is the Echelon Radio Network.
So this is Jerry Hemsworth with the Echelon Radio Podcast, and I'm sitting here today with Madison Oberg of Oberg Law. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So you are an Echelon 2 member, and that is the Echelon Associate level membership. How do you find E2? We call it E2. How do you find that so far?
It's been good. So, I grew up with my dad always being involved in like provisors and things like that. So I had sat in on a couple, but
lots of networking.
Yes,
right?
So much networking.
Yeah.
Dave's always been a great networker. So it's one of those skills that I kind of never had the option of not being good at. But no, so when we first heard about E2 and that opportunity, Dave and I were both really excited because, now that I'm a partner at the Oberg Law Group, building my own book of business is really important, but it's hard as like a younger professional trying to have the confidence to like step out there or have those spaces to be heard. You and I were just talking about that, creating spaces for, people who might have less experience in years, but still offer a lot and, creating those spaces where we feel empowered and confident to be able to kind of tap into that side of ourselves. Yeah. So I've had a really positive experience with it. I've actually gotten some business out of it already.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah. Thanks. I love that. Well, you bring up Oberg Law Group. You are a partner at Oberg Law Group, and your partner is?
My dad, David Oberg.
Your dad, David Oberg. What is it like working with Dad for you?
Yeah, I think at first, there was some bumps in the road, but we were really committed to making it work and finding. I think the catchphrase of my life right now is boundaries, and for us, finding that balance of we're in, now it's dinner. We're at dad and daughter mode. Or like, now we're working.
Shut the office door.
Exactly. We're business partners now. And so, working for ourselves, those lines are already very much blurred, right? We're always on. So trying to like really pay attention to when he's providing feedback, I'm giving this to you as a professional. It's not me being a dad like scolding my kid.
Sure.
This is just feedback to make you the best professional you can be, which I would hope from any mentor, whether or not we're related. And so, but also making him feel comfortable enough that he knows he can give me that feedback without fear of me, breaking down, being like, my dad hates me,
Right.
So it goes both ways and really kind of, I think the foundation is very much like a respect. Right. And I really look up to him as a professional. So it's been great because he's been practicing for quite some time. I think he's a great attorney. I've only, had positive reviews from people around me. So it's really nice that we have that like close relationship that allows us to really kind of lean into it more.
Do you have family occasions where the other family members have to shut you down because you're talking shop? Say like time out. This is not the place.
Not too much.
Okay.
I'm pretty good about turning it off. Maybe that's my generation, but the self-care is really important to me. So I'm pretty good about being like, hey, we'll pick it up in the morning.
Yeah.
He's been pretty good about it too.
Let's table that for tomorrow.
Yeah, he's been very respectful. If I'm like, hey, Dave, I'm not having a great day. Like, we need to pick it up. He's like, okay.
That's fantastic. So tell me about the practice areas. What is it that you and David do at Oberg Law?
Yeah, so we're business attorneys. So we have our general transactional practice area where we do everything from, just corporate advisory work, entity formation, annual compliance, mergers and acquisitions, deals like that. And then we also have a bankruptcy and insolvency practice.
And you and I were talking the other day about what we playfully call superpowers, and what brought you to this area of law? What is it that you bring that is very beneficial to your clients? What do you know is your professional superpower?
Well, yeah. So based on our conversation and like really thinking about it a lot, I think we kind of, realized that for me, it's my compassion.
Yes.
I'm a deep feeler.
Yes.
You know, one of my strengths
Yes.
and also one of my weaknesses. So I found a way to kind of tap into it at the right times, I think.
Turn it around to
exactly.
a very positive thing. Sure.
And I think it's been really helpful because, you know, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, in law school, I clerked at the DA's office. It was a volunteer clerkship. I volunteered at the DA's office, and I was really focused on more public interest focused practice. And, you know, it was really easy for me to, you know, be really passionate about and want to help people. And I've always said I wanted to use my legal degree to help people, not just make money. You know, if I was in it for the money, I would have just gone into business. I would have skipped the debt, you know?
Yeah, sure.
But so while I realized that public interest wasn't the best path for me, and I find business really interesting, I think of myself as a pretty practical person. So, you know, I find that's very helpful, and I like the unique problems that come up with just a general business like operation and finding solutions. And so being able to tap into that, like that part of me that was so motivated to just like serve and like help people in the business sphere, I think can be pretty unique, where at times it can be very like, okay, it's all about the numbers. I'm like, yeah, but behind every business is humans who are running it.
Well, and you and I were talking about bankruptcy. We were saying how clients come to you when they are really down and really scared and freaked out. And your ability to put yourself in their shoes and the desire to help. Well, we have a guest. We have a guest on our podcast today whose name is Tilly, and you may have just had her input. But
she'll help with your bankruptcy.
Yeah,
too.
she'll help with bankruptcy. And this will play into the podcast in just a minute, because you'll learn a little bit more about Madison and puppies and doggies. But we do have a puppy with us today, which is really fun. She's actually sitting in Madison's lap practically right now.
Perfect. I'm pretty sure she's bigger.
She doesn't want anything to do with me, which is kind of funny, but quite fun. But yeah, are you bankrupt, Tilly? Never. Bankrupt of toys.
Exactly.
So coming back to when a client comes to you and they're really down, how do you approach somebody like that right off the bat? Is it your heart first, your brain first? What would you say?
Yeah, I think it has to be a gentle balance, because, you know, it's still important, you know, as a lawyer to be able to maintain that objectiveness. You know, you can't allow your feelings to guide it too much, because sometimes, you know, it's like, you know, you feel for the person, but like, you know, the number of times we have to say, you know, like this is what we think, but like we're not the ones to be able to help you with this, right? And so we want to be able to do everything we can, but we also, you know, want to be really mindful of like what would be the best for you.
Yes.
So you have to be able to kind of like feel and like be present and like look at things from their perspective, but also still maintaining enough of that ability to kind of take a step back and still have, you know, a clear understanding and view of the situation.
Right.
But it's a gentle mix, I think. But, you know, the first thing, especially in like a bankruptcy situation, that I really take pride in, and I think Dave does a really good job of this too, is just kind of creating a welcoming, comfortable space in which people feel comfortable having those conversations.
Right.
Because, you know, very rarely is someone like, oh, I'm thinking of considering a bankruptcy. That's great. I can't wait to shout that to the world.
Right,
you know, there's so much shame and stress and
they're so vulnerable.
Exactly.
And it's embarrassing to have to say, I'm in trouble. I need your help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so really, for me, having that like, background understanding and approaching the conversation really makes a difference. And then you can have those honest conversations, and you can really look at the situation and see, you know, does a bankruptcy make sense? Maybe this other solution makes sense. Like, how can we like figure out what really would be the best for you? And that's what it's about. It's like working with someone and, you know, not judging.
Right.
Just being there. And that's part of it too, is, you know, so many people, when they do call us, I had one client who, she was great, but she would just call me and they were having some issues with a business partner. So she would just call to vent about the business partner, which like the person who loves trash TV and me was like, oh my gosh, like tell me, like what's all the
I want
drama,
the dirt.
but also still being professional, going, you know, not leaning, not in that moment, you know, I was like, oh my God, tell me more.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're just like acknowledging
they
sometimes
do?
they just need a person to vent to
Yeah,
too.
sure.
And, you know, being able to be that can be really helpful.
Oh God, that's really
It was
great.
always funny. Whenever she called, I'm like, gotta sit down for this one.
Let's take a powder. So I want to go back a little bit. Where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles, but I grew up in Calabasas.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then you are one of 3 children.
Yes.
Where do you fall in line with the 3 kids?
I'm the middle child.
The middle child.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always feel like a middle child? Or did you ever think about that and go, what the heck?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people who are middle children will make comments like, oh, yeah, it's the middle child. But I don't know. All of us were so unique. And I think we all ebbed and flowed in terms of who was the temporary favorite. So I don't know, people were like middle child syndrome. Like, what does that mean?
Well, that's interesting because your father has had a couple of different careers,
Mm-hmm.
and he talks about them in his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But what made you, out of the 3 of you, want to go to law school?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was that like something your dad had that influence, or were you just, what made you say, you know what, I want to be an attorney?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure Dave probably had a tremendous amount of influence over that, but I kind of went back and forth with things. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a coroner one day when I grew up.
Hey,
yeah, I was
coroner.
Like, yeah, I know. You know,
wow.
Really uplifting stuff. But
fascinating.
I really like problem solving and like puzzles and
mysteries.
Yeah, I wanted to live my Agatha Christie fantasy.
Oh yeah.
But then I realized I suck at science.
Uh-oh.
So it was a cool
That's a
idea
problem.
in theory, but yeah.
It was like me wanting to be a marine biologist, and then I found out how much chemistry was involved. I said, next.
It kind of puts a damper on it. But it was actually funny because when I was at the DA's office, the woman I worked for, she was like a DNA master. So I got to go to the crime lab all the time, and I got to go to the coroner's office all the time. And so I became like really like familiar with, you know, I'm not a DNA expert, but I like really understand it. So it's like, cool to like tap into that childhood, like thought I was going to be like a coroner or CSI or something.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing it. But but I think it just kind of ultimately made sense because, you know, I love writing. I love, you know, the reading, and I like old things. I studied Renaissance literature in college, so I like to say I like old things. But, you know, I think law is like a great way to tap into kind of, you know, I'm a creative person, and you have to really be able to think outside the box to be a good lawyer. And so it tapped into like my love of writing and like language and like looking at things and how can you read it differently and like spin it, you know, because that's what it's all about. Is, you know, the law is not black and white. It's very gray. Right. And so you can read something and 4 different people will tell you it means something differently. Yes. So I think Dave definitely was an influence because I grew up around it, so I knew that was an option for me. And I, you know, was helping update his like books and stuff from the time I was a kid. So I was always, you know, kind of had my like toes in the legal water. Yes. So it was just kind of a natural like progression.
Because your siblings didn't go into law, just you. Interesting.
Yeah. Danielle's our scientist. She's a paleontologist.
Yeah. Okay. There's where the science genes went.
Exactly. They just did not go to me.
Yeah, but you got the humanities part.
Exactly. Yeah. And Nick's a musician, so he's still trying to find his like final
career
path.
One.
Exactly.
Okay. So. That's cool. That's very cool. Growing up, what kind of animals and pets did you have?
Well, my first pet ever was a toad named Benjamin. He was a fire-belly toad. So that's where it all started. But, which apparently I accidentally killed him and didn't know. And bless my mom, she kept buying me more Benjamins.
No.
I kept getting,
No. Yeah. You had multiple Benjamins?
Yeah, apparently there was a bunch.
Oh, no. Oh my God!
Yeah,
what were you doing to them?
I would give them baths. But the toads don't do well in warm water. Which I feel like I shouldn't say this. I'm never going to be allowed to adopt a dog. But so apparently, yeah, my mom's like, oh yeah, it's actually Benjamin number 5, and I found out after. I'm like, oh my gosh! So that was my first pet experience.
How long did it take her to fess up?
I was definitely like in high school or something when she like.
Oh dear God.
Yeah, I like lived my whole life thinking I was like I was such a good like toad mom.
He's very old.
I was finally, at a certain point, she's like, okay, we got to move on, But yeah, it was so funny. I went through all these years thinking, like, yeah, I was so good at raising this toad. Like,
I've
I
got
had
a
him for
green
forever.
thumb for toads.
Yep, nope, turns out,
No.
I guess I'm better with dogs.
Okay.
And so we grew up with a black lab named Shadow. We had him
Shadow.
for 14 years.
Yes.
And then when Shadow crossed over the Rainbow Bridge, at the time I was volunteering at an animal shelter in Aurora.
Wait. So what made you want to go volunteer at an animal shelter?
Yes. So I love the Pupperonis.
Yeah.
They're my favorite. And so I always wanted to.
Yeah.
But when I was in college, I went to school in Wisconsin. And so the requirement for the county shelters was that you had to commit to at least 6 months. Okay. But during that time, I was never in one place for more than 3 months. So it was one of those one day I'm going to volunteer at this animal shelter. It's going to be magical. And so when this summer going into law school, because I graduated and went straight into law school. And so that summer I'm like, I'm going to fill out the application and I'll see. And I kind of forgot about it. And then they did the county volunteer training. And so I did my training this summer going into my first year at law school. So I did that all throughout law school. I took a little time off when I was studying for the bar, but I did that right up until the pandemic.
Wow. Wow.
So
And I know Shadow is on the other side of the Rainbow Bridge. Did anybody fill Shadow's paws?
Yes.
Okay, who is
She's
that?
our chief wellness officer now. Her name's Sophie.
Okay.
Her full name is Sophie Guernsey Sparkle Oberg.
So appropriate if you haven't met Sophie.
Because she's a diva.
I believe she's on your website.
She is.
Yes.
So you can check her out and look at her glamour shots.
Yes.
But Sophie was my shelter crush. And so when Shadow passed away, my dad made it about 10 days. And, he was like, I can't do it. We need a dog.
Yes.
And they were like, do you know anyone that's really great at the shelter? And
so she was at the shelter where you were volunteering in Aurora.
Yeah, she was there for a couple months.
Okay.
So.
Oh, a couple months?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. The nice thing about Agora is they don't have an issue with space, so dogs have more time there than they would at a different county shelter. So.
Right.
So it's they call it the Ritz-Carlton of the county shelters. So
yes.
Of all the places to volunteer, at least it's a nice one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Sophie comes into the Oberg family.
Yes.
And how does she change the Oberg family, especially with working at home?
Well, coming from growing up with a dog that we had from the time he was a puppy, Shadow, he was a great dog. But, he grew up with a magical life. Sure. Sophie, we adopted her at 7.
She was 7, so an older girl.
Yeah. So, and I don't know what her history was, but, I like to say if she had a memoir, it'd be called Triggered, because she's a very anxious girl. So I don't think her original home was the best. And we were actually, I think, the 3rd or 4th family to adopt her. She kept getting returned at the shelter because she had separation anxiety. So these people would adopt her and then leave her in their apartment for a weekend. And she's like, hello.
Yes.
Don't you see I'm amazing? Come hang out with me,
Yes.
And so when she came into our home, and I think having me there really helped her kind of settle in right away because she was like, I know her.
You.
So it was good. But, rescuing a dog, it's just a completely different experience. She's so grateful. She's so eager to love you. And so it was really special.
So I noticed something, and I've been to the Oberg home. I've experienced Sophie. She is a pit mix, as are our dogs.
Right.
The most misunderstood breed ever.
Absolutely.
But I've noticed that around the Oberg home, there's a bed for Sophie in every damn room. Every room.
Well, she can't sleep on the floor. She's not an animal.
Hello.
She's a goddess.
God, Sophie. So I've been on Zooms with Dave, and I've in network, and Sophie's always in the background. I know that Dave and your family had moved homes, and I noticed Sophie wasn't always in the background now. Sophie is also in your mother's office. How is Dave handling that? Because suddenly I get the feeling he's not the favored parent anymore, because she's spending a lot of time in the other office.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't asked Dave, so I can't.
Okay, so
I can't firmly answer that.
All
But
right.
I'm sure he's working through it.
I'm curious, and I just thought about this. Your love of puzzles and your compassion for clients and animals, and you said you're a very feeling person, emotional. And we talking about your superpower again. I think what I hear is somebody that's going to have a very long career in law and holding on to that compassion. Where do you see yourself in 10 years, would you say? With that, have you thought about that? Have you thought about, where, are you going to stay in business law and bankruptcy? Is that something that or is it adding on to that? Because there's so many areas of law where you can take that same passion and pull it into other. Do you have any dreams, or is it right now bankruptcy and business is it for you?
Yeah, I think, for now, I'm really happy where I'm at.
Yeah.
I know, Dave and I have talked a lot about, over the next several years, like really kind of stepping into more of like a leading partner role. So I see that in the future, but I'm not, I rarely do where do I see myself in 10 years?
Yeah.
Because if you asked me that 4 years ago, I was going to be an FBI special agent.
Well,
so, which it's still an option.
Hey.
But I never say no.
Never.
Exactly. But, so it's, I'm going to sound like a hippie when I say this, but every time I kind of have a plan, the universe has a different one.
I agree with that 100%.
And so the number of times I've gone, I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to push forward with it, and the universe is like, not today.
Hang on.
And so I have ambitions. I have, I see myself with, several dogs and hopefully a yard for them and all these great things. Yes. And I see, taking the firm and, maybe growing it to the point that we can have, another partner, an associate or something, that I'm very open to. So I see myself like rolling with Oberg Law Group and hopefully just continuing to, help people and do good work.
Expand there.
But in terms of like much more substantive than that, I try to just kind of like focus on today and like see what opportunities come.
Fantastic.
I just every time I thought I knew, it's always shifted. And so I found that like kind of leaning back and just like being more present, like watching where the world's taking me has been like worked out better for me.
Extremely wise for somebody at your age. I think that is not common. And your ability to identify that is really, really fun. And I love hearing that. So one last question. We believe having animals in the workplace is extremely valuable. And I know there's a lot of people that believe the same thing. Stress relief, staying in touch with what's important. How do you feel about animals in the workplace and having Sophie be the chief wellness officer and the plan to have more animals in your future? How do they play into your business? Because I know our business is named after our animals.
Yeah.
And we've identified that. I'm curious what your take is on it.
Yeah. Well, I think, we know that happier people are more productive. I think, having pups around or, if it's cats, or, if it's an iguana, I don't know. I don't yuck your yums. But whatever it is, I think, just for me, wellness is really important. And I think animals really tap into that. And so I think from a business standpoint, it makes you more productive. But I also think for us, we are a more casual firm. Just because we're casual people doesn't mean, we're, lazy with our work. We still do high quality work.
Absolutely.
But, we're much more we're not suit people.
Right.
We obviously have them for when they're necessary, but if
there's
you
a time and place for
exactly. Very limited.
As long as you
but
have
we
some
do.
great heels to go with it. Yeah.
Of course. But so, with us, if you're coming to a meeting, with David and Madison, it's going to be like at a coffee shop. It's going to be a lunch. It's much more of that casual, you're really kind of joining our family.
Yes.
More
it's
so.
A culture.
And so for us, the way we see it is, if you're weirded out by our dog being on the website, there's a lot of other firms, and that's awesome. If you're offended by, Sophie chiming in the back of a conference call, again.
Or Tilly on a podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They add a lot. And
Yes.
so you should listen to them because
Yes.
sometimes they say more intelligent things than me.
Well,
No, but I think that's what it is.
So
Is,
true.
it really just taps into we are a family business,
Yes.
and we treat our clients like they are family.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes, the Pupperonis. And
well, it's interesting because I started our firm when I was 30.
okay.
And being a young professional myself, and we talked about how there's not a lot of outlets for young professionals. But going back, once I was able to work at home and start our firm out of the house and have the animals with me, I realized the power, their superpower.
Yeah.
So that when we did move into office space, we had the dog written into the lease. And that we could bring the dog to the office because we did have a dog treat company as a client.
Okay.
But it was that important to us that we were able to bring, at the time she was Gracie, Newman Grace, golden retriever, to the office.
Right.
And so we're on the same page with Oberg Law Group that the power of the pups is
Yeah.
tremendous. And
Absolutely.
And I'm sure your clients appreciate them as well.
Yeah.
Madison, thanks for being with me today. It's so fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care.
All right.
Presented by Echelon Business Development. More than just networking. Way more.